What you saw in the Iran-Contra hearings was the exposure of the beginnings of a national security state which believes it has the right to override the Constitution of the United States in the name of security.
I think that there was a substantial shadow government trying to run foreign affairs for the United States.
In any other country, it would have been called a coup. And they seem to have gotten away with it.
And who is going to inhibit them? The gangsters that are running this country is going to inhibit somebody.
What's happening here, my friends, is a major deception which is in process as we stand and talk tonight. A major deception in the same way that the Warren Commission was a major deception worked upon the American people. The same way that the Watergate investigation was a major deception worked upon the American people. Just like the bombing, the secret bombing of Cambodia was kept secret and was a deception worked upon the American people. How long are we going to stand for being deceived in this manner?
Then came Watergate, a president forced to resign, and the American people, disillusioned by White House corruption and lies, wanted a change. In 1976, Jimmy Carter was elected president. He and new CIA Director Stansfield Turner began to clean house, pushing out nearly 800 men from CIA covert operations.
When all these covert operators were fired in the 1970s, they didn't just start opening restaurants or working in bookstores. They were people who were very skilled in covert manipulation of political process, and they essentially ganged up to find and then elect a candidate who would put them back in the covert operations business. And Reagan and Bush were only too eager to be that kind of candidate.
Our government has a firm policy not to capitulate to terrorist demands, that no concessions policy remains in force. In spite of the wildly speculative and false stories about arms for hostages and alleged ransom payments, we did not, repeat, did not trade weapons or anything else for hostages, nor will we.
Despite Reagan's denials, investigations soon revealed that arms had been traded for hostages held in the Mideast.
A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
There were 2 meetings that we know of for certain to date that happened, one in Washington, D.C., and one in Paris, France, before the 1980 election in October of 1980, where George Bush, then vice presidential candidate, Richard Allen, who became Reagan's first national security advisor, Donald Gregg, who became Bush's national security advisor and still is, passed millions of dollars to the Iranians to delay the release of our 52 hostages an additional 76 days. They met with an emissary of the Khomeini regime who offered a deal that they thought Reagan and Bush could not refuse, and that was, we will delay the release of the 52 hostages if you will promise us all the arms that we could possibly want in the war against Iraq once you become President of the United States.
Secret team, or simply a loose association of individuals.
These are the men who have been stirring the pot around the world to instigate these wars on the side of the right wing. And that's the group that we're dealing with right here, who are making war around the world for their own personal profit.
When Reagan was elected to the presidency, he installed Louis Giuffrida as head of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Giuffrida was an old, cold warrior from Reagan's California days, whose specialty was suppression of unrest and dissent. Giuffrida, North, and George Bush began to turn FEMA into an instrument of domestic anti-terrorism.
And that would explain why North spent so many years under Bush's auspices preparing contingency plans for rounding up large numbers of dissenters if we ever go into another war. Now, you'd have thought that the committee would have been outraged by North's sort of declaration of war with a large segment of the American people, but instead of their disagreeing with them, most of them actually agreed with him.
The fear of an enemy within is not new in American government. In 1942, amidst the hysteria following the bombing of Pearl Harbor, over 100,000 Americans of Japanese descent were rounded up and put into mass prison camps. They were accused of no crime, given no trial, but remained incarcerated for several years. This internment of Japanese Americans is thought by many to be one of the darkest moments in American history. But could it happen again?
Concomitant with this whole operation and Oliver North's involvement in it was a plan to suspend the United States Constitution, as they referred to it, under a state of national emergency on the part of the President. Where that comes from is a specific program called Rex 84, Readiness Exercise, number 84, or for 1984. And it was undertaken under the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Now, this was a national executive branch agency that was originally set up at the very end of the Carter administration to do nothing more than to coordinate the national flood relief, hurricane relief, Red Cross stuff, things, to get the government programs all brought under one umbrella so they could coordinate them.
You're dealing with a group of people in the Reagan administration who equated political dissent with treason, and who cannot differentiate between emergency procedures, which I think everyone agrees are necessary, and suppressing political dissent. And with North and Poindexter and Casey, you had a group of people who saw Americans who disagree with them as the enemy.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was, but I wanted to get his confirmation.
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend, invoke the military, and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps.
It is not a CIA gone wild or a secret government operating on its own. It's a group of people doing things with the authority of and at the direction of the White House.
Now, I believe that the American people understand that democracy cannot survive that kind of abuse.